Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Nur Shawa. I am a third year student studying English literature. My topic today is about my suffering in the war on Gaza. In the beginning, I will talk about the Gaza war and what Israel did in general. The Al-Aqsa flood pattern, or the Hamas-Israel war, or the Israeli war on Gaza, is an ongoing conflict between Palestinian resistance faction led by Hamas on one side and the Israeli army on the other. It began after a coordinated and surprise attack launched by Hamas on Israel, which they called the Al-Aqsa Flood Operation. On the morning of Saturday, October 7th, 2023. The attack involved the launch of at least 3,000 rockets from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip toward Israel, alongside the breach of the barrier between Gaza and Israel by approximately 2,500 Palestinian militants. These militants conducted an assault using cars, motorcycles, gliders, and other means on the nearby town known as the Gaza Envelope. They took control of several military cities, particularly in Sderot, which overcame infiltrated Netivot, and engaged in face clashes in these settlements and others. They also captured a number of soldiers and citizens, taking them to Gaza, and seized a number of Israeli military vehicles. The attack resulted in the death of at least 1,400 Israelis. Israel launched a face war against the Gaza Strip, which included several intensive military actions. Among these actions were 1. Intensive airstrikes. The Israeli Air Force conducted widespread airstrikes on various locations in Gaza, targeting the infrastructure of Hamas and other Palestinian factions, including rocket launch sites, tunnels, and command posts. 2. Artillery and naval bombardment. In addition to airstrikes, Israel launched artillery and naval bombardment on cities within Gaza. 3. Ground invasion. Israel initiated group operations inside the Gaza Strip, focusing on areas near the border. 4. Comprehensive siege. Israel imposed a comprehensive siege on the Gaza Strip, making it more difficult for humanitarian supplies and essential necessities to reach civilians in Gaza. 5. Cutting of electricity and water. The Israeli air strikes targeting the infrastructure of electricity and water, leading to the disruption of essential services for many residents of Gaza. 6. Evacuation of border areas. Israel demanded the evacuation of residents from areas near the border in anticipation of a group assault or heavy bombardment. This action resulted in widespread destruction in the Gaza Strip and a large number of civilian casualties. They also significantly impacted the humanitarian situation in the Strip, leading to international calls for a ceasefire and the provision of humanitarian aid. Before I talk about my suffering in this war, I will tell you a little about the countless suffering of the people of Gaza. The suffering of the people of Gaza in the war encompasses several severe humanitarian and living aspects. Here are some points that highlight this suffering. 1. Electricity and water cuts. Gaza suffers from almost constant power and water outages, making daily life much more difficult and affecting essential services such as hospitals and schools. Physical destruction. Residential buildings, school, hospital, and infrastructure are subjected to bombings, causing widespread destruction and forcing families to flee their homes. 3. Displacement and homelessness. Due to the bombings, many residents are forced to relocate within the Strip, living in inhuman conditions in schools, shelters, or even in the open air under pieces of cloth called tents on the street. 4. Food and clean water shortages. The ongoing blockade and armed confrontation hinder the entry of food and clean water into the Strip, leading to severe shortages of food and drinking water and increasing rates of malnutrition and disease. 5. Healthcare. Hospitals and clinics suffer from severe shortages of medicines and medical equipment, in addition to the immense pressure caused by the large numbers of wounded and sick people. 6. Psychological trauma. Living under constant bombardment and fear of attacks, leading to severe psychological stress, especially for children, causing anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. 7. Economy and education. Economic activities come to a near complete halt, increasing unemployment and poverty. Schools are often closed or used as shelters for the displaced, negatively affecting children's education and future. These points reflect part of the daily reality that the people of Gaza live through during periods of war, where humanitarian, economic, and social factors converge to create extremely difficult living conditions. My suffering in this war began when I was 6 months pregnant with my first child. The occupation forces targeted my neighbor's house and we evacuated the building. I lived on the 7th floor and in a state of fear, I ran out into the street in the middle of the night and took refuge at Al-Quds Hospital. We didn't have a car or any means of transportation, so we walked on foot, and I felt severe pain in my abdomen. After that, the army ordered us to move to the southern part of the Strip, claiming it was a safe area. I went there with my husband's family, crying intensely because I left my family in Gaza, along with their entire family, were martyred. We couldn't get them out from under the rubble due to the intense bombing. I stayed at my husband's sister's house in Khan Yunis. There wasn't any healthy food. We ate canned food all the time, and there wasn't enough flour. I ate small meals while pregnant. Communication was cut off, and I couldn't talk to my family in Gaza for a long time. I was scared for them all the time because they didn't leave their house even during dangerous times. Imagine how difficult this feeling was. One of the relatives told me that my house was bombed, and that was a shock. I had bought a crib for my baby and many beautiful things. All my dreams were shattered. Winter came and I didn't have any clothes because I left my house without taking any of my belongings. After a while, the occupation decided on a group operation in Khan Yunis and started intense random bombings. That night was very difficult. Shrapnel and stones flew over us. After that, We decided to move again to Rafah without shelter. I stayed in a small tent with my husband's family. We didn't find water and we passed only twice a month, each of us according to our turn. At that time, I was in my last month of a pregnancy and my due date was approaching. After a long search, I found a doctor and went to check on my baby. He told me that my baby's weight was very low due to poor nutrition. He told me that my baby's weight was very low due to poor nutrition. I tried to find any clothes because it was winter and we were in a tent and the baby wouldn't withstand the severe cold. Suddenly, I felt severe pain at night. My labor had started. I had always been waiting for this moment, but not under such circumstances. Far from my family, I couldn't tell them I was going into labor, and they couldn't see my baby. Unfortunately, I went out under the bombardment with no means of transportation. After a long search and much suffering, which increased my pain and put me in a critical condition, I was about to give birth in the street. Thank God I managed to give birth and I named my son Time. He was weak and got sick, often due to the tent, the wood smoke, and the insects. I couldn't do anything for him. My husband's family decided to go to Egypt, but I refused because I didn't want to be far from my family. I hoped to return to my home and see my family, but I couldn't oppose my husband. I chose my son's well-being because the tent was extremely hot in the summer, and my little one wouldn't be able to endure the heat and insects in that tent. So I traveled to Egypt, where I treated my son, who had chest problems due to the smoke and wood, and my husband, who had contracted hepatitis due to contaminated food. Even after leaving Gaza, my suffering didn't end. A new struggle began in finding shelter and work because we had to start from scratch as if we had nothing. But I have not and will never forget my family and my country, and I wait with hope that one day I will return to the place where I was born. Israel destroyed my life and the lives of millions.